Hey, Hileena, welcome to the show. We are super excited for everybody listening. Hileena is our COO of CRDLE. She is, I would say, the yin to my yang. We've been through a lot together, and she's here today to share some of her expertise, her story, and the work that she's doing, and it will have lots of takeaways for all the business owners out there. So, Hileena, thank you for joining.
Of course. Happy to be here.
I can't believe you haven't been on the show before, but I'm really happy you're here now. For everybody listening, can you tell them where were you born, where did you grow up, and where do you live now?
Yes, it's like a full circle though. So I was born in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, and then I moved right around like first grade. I moved to California, Berkeley, California. Grew up there, did 20 plus years in California, and then recently moved back to Addis Ababa, Ethiopia after getting married. So just did a little round trip.
I know we always joke that like you came back to Ethiopia right when I was coming back to the US and we like traded lives. What is it like to be back in Ethiopia after being gone for so long?
It's surreal. I mean, Ethiopia's developed significantly, right, from when I first moved. So it's been constant change, and then also just living in a developing country, you learn a lot of different ways to like cope and work through things that you wouldn't have to, right, in the comfort of, say, like the Bay Area. But I love it because I'm stretching and learning and like really pushing my boundaries. So it's been great. Cool.
That's awesome. I feel like we have a lot of American listeners who've never been to Ethiopia or maybe even been to the continent. And I know it's impossible to say this in a quick few sentences, but what is Ethiopia like today? I know that you and me have both gotten clients who like reference like the Ethiopian famine, which happened before I was born, and I'm older than you. So, I think we're not caught up on what it's actually like. So what is it like living there?
Yeah, especially Addis Ababa, like super modern city. You've got like this massively beautiful skyline. It's just a nice little balance between like the older world, right? Of maybe say like historical things that you get to see, like the National Museum and parts of Piazza, and then the super modern side of it now with all this new development and like big companies moving in. So it's like a nice little balance between pre-developed Ethiopia and then now this like amazing hub or Mecca of Africa, which some people like to call it, Ababa.
A Mecca of Africa. I love that.
Yeah.
It is. I think that's a really good description because there is all these parts where it is super modern and like all these Fortune 500 companies are building teams there. But yet it's not so developed that you miss out on like the beauty of the Ethiopian culture and the hospitality and just like the things that we love about Ethiopia are still super present in the day to day. Can you tell me, okay, so we met obviously on LinkedIn. I feel like I don't go through a podcast without mentioning my love of LinkedIn. So we met on LinkedIn, and what made you want to join CRDLE?
Yeah, so I was like on LinkedIn perusing and like looking at different things that were happening on the continent after I moved here, because I wasn't actually that familiar with what was going on in terms of like tech or opportunities in like this part of the world, right? Coming from Silicon Valley, Bay Area, really like basic, generic, like, tech worlds. And I came across your profile and I was like, oh my gosh, you did amazing stuff. I want to be your friend. That's how it started. And then I sent you a message because I genuinely, like, I've always had this dream of living back to Ethiopia, even when I was younger. And people would ask me, like, what do you want to do? I'd say I want to move back and like help. I didn't know what that was, right? What capacity that was in. But I always knew that like I wanted to come back to Ethiopia to make an impact. And so seeing that CRDLE was already doing that, and it was like a one-woman show, I just wanted to know how I could support that. And support that endeavor in any way. So I reached out to you, obviously, like just a nice little connection message, and it started from there. And I felt like it was really organic. So
It was. And yeah, you were like the first person to join the team. And then I always tell people, like, I think we tripled within 3 months after you joined. And like, that's the value of like growing your team with good people. And one of the things that I know you do best is you're like a little matchmaker behind the scenes.
Really?
So you meet the client and then you help also find the right, we have so many good candidates, but how do you match them with the right client? And you're so good at it. You're so thoughtful about it. How do you even go about knowing what a client needs and who to match them with?
Yeah, I think I've been on the receiving end of like recruiters reaching out to me and trying to poach me for different opportunities. And I've interviewed a lot for a lot of different companies just to make sure that like that muscle still works, right? While I was working at other companies. And I just switched the mentality. So I had never recruited before, right? Which you knew. But then it felt really natural because I was just thinking about like two pieces of a puzzle fitting. And so I would look at the candidate and I would immediately be like, I think these sort of opportunities and these sort of sectors would be great for them. And then we'd have a discovery call with the client and I would think through all of the things that they were speaking to us about, and instantly, like from our database, certain names would pop up in my head. So it's a little bit of a Rain Man thing where you like see names and things up in the air and then you match them in your head. And yeah, it feels really natural. So I don't know if there's like an actual formula to it that I can say like, do this. But yeah, it comes very naturally for me to put those puzzle pieces together.
No, you're so good at it. Like even yesterday, we won't mention the name, but we did an interview with an American company who wanted to hire a sales professional. You put 3 candidates together for him, all like perfect college experience, perfect work experience. And then at the end, he was just so like, I want them all. I need them all. Like they're so good. And I mean, like, what is your perspective of the talent pool in Ethiopia or other African countries? I think a lot of US clients ask us that. What is like the educational backgrounds, the experience level? What do you think about it?
Yeah. And I really wanted to mention, like, the biggest piece of the credit to recruiting is the talent pool, right? Because if they weren't there, like, who would you place in these interviews and have like amazing interactions with? But the really cool part, and like coming from some bias in my head and growing up in California and like living next to UC Berkeley, is that you think like education is siloed in the US and like that's the best of the best. But clearly, it's not, because we're meeting these people who, have like their bachelor's, their master's, some PhD people, and then they also just have amazing experience and they're 10 times smarter than me. So it's not necessarily location dependent, right? Like they're here and they have this amazing education, this amazing background, and then they're just missing like all the opportunities that we're given in the Bay Area. But I would say like in America, you can be subpar and still have amazing opportunities. And here you have to be exceptional. And that's like the talent pool that we pull from.
Right. And even when you're exceptional, like as soon as they apply for a US job that's with a company they want to work with, they get denied just like based on like the country they live in. But I'm laughing because our talent is good. And I know you and me, whenever we have a question like about AI or crypto or TikTok, like we're like, we'll just ask one of them because they do know even more than we do.
Yeah, 100%. It's like a resource pool for us too, right? We learn a lot from them as well. So, but yeah, it's nice.
They bring so much. And I also agree that like the education, I think people should know that the universities in Ethiopia and other African countries, it's on par with like what's happening in the US. Like my sister is a teacher, and I remember when she came to Ethiopia, she was looking at Ruthie, like my niece's like books, and she's like, oh, this is like ahead of what my students are learning at this level. And I was like, yeah. It's
I
like
would
really good.
I would venture to say like regular education in Ethiopia is probably more difficult actually, because it's not as like streamlined and things aren't getting updated as often in terms of making things simple and easy to learn And so they're really like going through the ringer to get that same level of education, and they're working 10 times as hard. So you can see that payout.
Yeah, no, that's so super true. And I know we talk a lot about like there's a lot of talk about like the social impact of what we're doing. Can you talk about like what does it look like before someone is working at Cradle? Where are they? What are they doing? And then how do things shift once they are hired with one of our US clients?
Yeah, so that we do know that there are other like white label companies that do what we're doing right here in Africa. And so a lot of the folks that we speak to, especially when we start talking to them about the opportunity of moving over to Cradle, they get really excited because we're talking about taking all of their efforts, all of the energy that they put into these other companies, but really paying them properly for it. And so they go from making around like 50 cents an hour, maybe like a few $100s a month, right, to support like a family or for their full-time effort and work. And they instantly like 3, 4, 5x their income, which when you look at like living standards in Ethiopia, you become middle class instantly. And so that is a huge leap for them to make. And then you're also doing it in the comfort of your home as like a remote employee. There's just so many perks and things that maybe we don't think about when we're working in the United States that impact their lives here. And so it's a huge change. Like it's a drastic change from commuting 3 hours, lining up for a taxi to go into an office to work 60-hour weeks, making pennies on the dollar, to being able to work from home, support your family, and then also have all this like extra income that then gets spilled over to other parts of your life and your family. So we do live in multiple like generational homes here.
Yeah, no, that's so true. I think one problem we don't have is we don't have a hard time finding good people who want to work for us. If anything, I know we did a call yesterday with somebody who wanted customer service reps, and we're like, oh, we have a whole list of super incredible trained team members who would hop over to you in a second just because they're not really getting paid ethically or getting treated correctly. And that's like one of the value on our side with like the US clients is they are getting really good people. So let's talk about that. Like you come from like corporate America, Silicon Valley, startups. Can you share some of like your work experience? I'm always like in all of it, like personally, like it's very impressive what you've done. Talk about what you've done and how we do have like a really great ROI for businesses.
Yeah. So when I first joined a startup, it was honestly on a fluke. Like I was coming back from the airport, I had this customer success interview, and so like I ran over downtown San Francisco, jumped in, and instantly I was thrown into like fintech and Silicon Valley and like that startup world. And I started out as a customer success individual doing multiple things like at a startup, right? And so when I think about placing folks now into that world, I can really see how they're an added benefit. Like for the first startup that we had, we ended up outsourcing to Costa Rica, and we built an entire team in Costa Rica to supplement the team that we had in San Francisco. So we only had like a very small group of people in that office, but the back end of it was huge. And we were doing all of that outside of the United States. And so it seemed like a no-brainer, honestly. Like you do have all this like amazing talent pool to pull from. Why not like expand beyond just like those few spare miles and really look into how you can help your business grow? And also like the return investment, I think that's also very like win-win, no-brainer situation as well, right? Because you could pay someone $100,000 to be like an entry-level sales development rep, or you can pay someone more affordably for your business and scale much faster, but then you're still doing the ethical thing of it and making sure that they get paid correctly and well. So I've done a lot of different startups. I've had a lot of different positions. I feel like it came very like naturally and gradually. Worked for like Chorus, doing info, like some of the names that maybe people know. But I would say that they're like all really similar experiences.
That's cool. And how come, like, when you talk about like how your prior company was outsourcing to Costa Rica, why do you think US companies, especially Silicon Valley, are outsourcing to South America or places like India or the Philippines, but not coming to Africa? Like, it's never on anyone's top mind. What's happening?
Yeah, I would say that Africa is not top of mind for a lot of people. And that's unfortunate, right? Because we do have, especially like in the United States, there's North America, South America. So maybe you think instantly time zones match up, which we don't have that problem at CRDLE because we work like 9 to 5 EST and we're on a default. Yeah. And a lot of young people prefer that schedule anyways, right? But that's not necessarily top of mind. Or say like the branding of like knowing to go to the Philippines to get some additional assistance, or India to get some additional assistance. Like that's a much easier like thing to search and seek. And now like with CRDLE and some other BPO companies that are working out of Africa, and like with your marketing efforts as well, like we're getting a lot more traction and people are being able to really see like that Africa could be the answer to this same problem that they've had.
I agree. I think 95% of our clients didn't know hiring from like an African country was a thing or possible until they met us. Yeah, it's not, they didn't even know that that could be done. I know that we also do a lot of discovery calls together. What are some of the other popular questions that we answer? I feel like there's a few on repeat that we constantly are trying to like tell people about. What are some of the ones you help answer the most?
Yeah, I think one of the things is like the practical aspect of just making sure that people have like the proper hardware and the proper Wi-Fi, the proper like access, right, to like electricity. And those are things that like we haven't had to worry about that for the last few years in East Africa and other parts of Africa as well. Like we're developing at a pace for other tech companies to be able to come in and really set root here because the infrastructure is that good now. And it's only getting better. And so I think that is a bias that we tend to have is, oh, maybe Africa doesn't have, X, Y, Z, but that's no longer true. So it's a really easy question for us to answer on a discovery call.
It's also easy because my internet in Pittsburgh freezes like at least once during a call. So and then yours is like always fine. So it's really funny.
Yeah, I mean, practical things. They're fair question.
Yeah. It's fair question for somebody to ask. And then also, that hasn't been an issue. Even when I came to Ethiopia, it was like I first came to Ethiopia in 2010 for my first trip. And it's so different than what it is today. It's changed a lot. What are some more things that you wish, especially Silicon Valley, since that's kind of been your world and where you grew up in, how are some ways that like hiring from the continent would help more startups in the Bay Area?
Yeah, I think one of the things that startups really struggle with is hiring in general because they don't have the budget necessarily, right, to build these like 50, 60 people sales teams. And so what they do is like they'll have one person wearing multiple hats and doing 3-4 different roles, but not being able to really give the full energy and effort that role requires, especially when we're talking about sales and customer service. It's hard to juggle like a sales job, but then you're also doing a bunch of other things on the side for the startup. And so this way, like you can really scale your teams, and especially your sales and customer service and marketing teams, in a way that's both affordable and also like you're getting that top-notch talent that you wouldn't necessarily get otherwise. And I feel really confident saying that because again, we're talking about like limiting your pool, right? Of say a few thousand people that have a specific background, and now you're opening it up to millions of people who have marketing, sales, customer success, etc. And so those are like the teams that you really want to build in a startup. You want to build them fast to get that return, but you can't do that if you have limited resources.
100%. I was on a conference and like the CEO of Airbnb was speaking, and he was very clear, like the best people and the best employees aren't all within a 50-mile radius of San Francisco. Like there's a lot of other good people outside. And if you limit yourself, you are limited to that talent pool. And I know like a couple of weeks ago, we did a call with a company in the Bay Area, and it was also like the frustration of having a sales team with Christian salaries who weren't really motivated and the work ethic wasn't showing up in the way it needed to. Whereas like when you're plugging in with some like really energetic African professionals who are all of a sudden getting paid a lot more and treated better, like they just do so well. Like they really crush it.
Yeah. And especially like the level of energy that comes out of Africa, I think is like untapped because they just haven't had the opportunity to really like put their full potential forward, and you're giving them that. So you're getting the most out of like the folks that you hire from us.
Yeah, 100%. I know I'm hopping around a lot, but one of my favorite things is when we do an interview and we always like have like the talent talk about their work experience. And then we always say, and tell us one thing that you like to do like in your spare time. And that's kind of like the best part of the interview sometimes because it really opens up like a lot of laughter, a lot of conversation. What are some of your favorite answers that people have said?
Yeah, one of my biased answers actually is we were speaking to a candidate and we were getting him to open up, and he said he plays basketball, which we were like, oh, okay, not a lot of Africans, play basketball. It's more of a soccer, football kind of environment. And then I asked him what his favorite NBA team was, and he's like, the Golden State Warriors. Have you heard of them? I was like, have I heard of them? And so we went on like a whole tangent. And then there's like another debate that I had about like Marvel versus DC and how like, it's blasphemous to say that DC is like better than Marvel. And so there's just all these like fun conversations.
I think you said I won't put you in the interview if you say you like DC better. Like I think you were
pretty much. Yeah, sometimes you have to use your power just a tiny bit. So yeah, there's like so many fun like personalities and people that you meet through this process, and then you also realize like they're literally just like you. Like it's just like talking to another like American. There's not much difference. Like you guys consume the same media, you guys read the same things, you guys are on the same like TikTok algorithm. So human to human contact.
It's actually concerning, I think, how many of our team members are watching like Love Island or like so many of these other American shows. Or True Crime is a big one. People are probably afraid to come to me.
Embarrassed. Yeah, I remember how embarrassed she was to even share that like that was her favorite show. And I was like, no, please do, because I'm sure we all have that guilty pleasure. So, no, we get a lot of fun answers. Or like the bunny.
The bunny's one of my favorite ones. First of all, the candidate said she's obsessed with her pet bunny, which I think also having a pet bunny in Ethiopia is a little bit more rare. Like you don't hear that a lot. Very rare. And I feel like you could just see in her eyes, I feel like they were like watering up just talking about how much she loves her bunny. And then the client, he like works at like a bunny rescue shelter or something. And it was just like, I mean, I'm not saying that's why she got the job. She was also qualified, but yeah, that connection with the bunnies was like, it was an omen that she had to be the one that they chose.
Yeah. And interviews, I mean, they're obviously like we put forward candidates that are qualified, right? That's not the part that we're worried about, but making sure that you have that personal connection and someone that you're going to work with day in and day out. Like that's super important too. You want to enjoy the person that add into your team. So that's like the best part of doing interviewing and recruiting, honestly, like seeing that connection to it a lower view.
Yeah, agreed. Okay, I'm going to ask you some rapid fire questions. First, nothing to do with Cradle, but I know that you're kind of a traveler at heart. So where is the next place you want to visit in the African continent?
I would love to go to Zanzibar. I'm imagining like a baby moon, right? And like the beach, and we're in a landlocked country right now. So it being next to the ocean is something that I, like my entire life, I've had access to. And there's a bunch of beautiful beaches in Africa. So I think that one's like a really easy short flight over.
I support that. I support that fully. Zanzibar is so nice. And yeah, for people who love beach vacations, Zanzibar or like, I mean, there's so many beaches in Africa that they should visit. Okay, number 2, one thing you wish Americans knew specifically about Ethiopia?
Oh, maybe that it's not um, about like salmon and poorness and charity. Like I don't like that those things are necessarily like the first associations, right, that come to mind. I don't like people to think of Ethiopia as like a place where opportunities arise for folks outside of the African continent, and that it's truly a place, like it's the next up and coming place. And I want the positive associations to come along with that. I think we're double like the 1960s feed America stereotype, and now like we're moving over to like a huge modern society.
100%. I know that we talk a lot about the social impact of what we're doing because I always hope that funders will hear it and then get involved more, and people will recognize like the outsourcing is like a force for good. But I don't think you and me could ever talk to anybody that we've hired and talk about how we're helping them, because actually like they're the ones who are helping the US clients. Like we have a client who wants to leave his job, and he's going to do that because Beza is going to book him some keynotes. And we have clients who now have all this revenue because they have sales reps. And if you look at the impact of what our team is doing for US businesses, it's, if anything, they're helping the US maybe more than anything else.
This is a barrier to entry, right? Like the barrier to entry would be maybe like paying someone like 60, 70, 80K, and you don't have that barrier. Like you get that support in an affordable way, and then instantly like your business has changed overnight. So it's a win-win situation. Like I always, whenever I think about reasons why, I'm like duh, that's what comes to mind. So yeah,
I think it's just like people don't know it's there. And then once they start to meet the candidates in the interview and they see how they are like just so awesome and qualified, and then they get going, it's a positive experience. It's just getting people to do that first reach out and get on an interview. Okay, moving on. Since I talked about funders, I know we both have strong thoughts on like what we wish funders would do. What's one thing that you think is missing in like in funding in this area that you wish we could do?
I think that funding like certain nonprofit organizations, or even just like the charity mindset, and not necessarily where it's at. I think funding people who are creating like opportunities and jobs is where the focus should be, because that doesn't just help the individual that's getting the job, it like lifts an entire community out of poverty. We see impacts where like one person has a job and they're the breadwinner, and they're not only taking care of their wives and kids or their husband and children, they're also taking care of their grandma, their grandpa, their cousins, and all these extended folks. And then that lifts a huge group out of poverty, which then is like a trickle up effect, right? So I think looking for opportunities like that to put your money into makes more sense to me than just putting money into something that is not going to make more money and support people in that way.
Mm-hmm. There's so much funding for people who are like training like African professionals, but like the truth is they already kind of have the training and they just need the job. So why isn't there more of a focus, to your point, on like supporting the people who are like creating the jobs? What you said also makes me think of the conversation we had this week. I think people can tell that you're on every single meeting I have because I'm referencing everything. But
we hang out 24/7.
Yeah. So I know that this week somebody was talking about the commission that they give their US reps, and they're super happy to provide that same commission. It doesn't even have to be like less money, same commission to our team members, our sales professionals. And they're like, is that too much money to give? And can you talk about what your response was? Because it was so on point.
Yeah. And no, I was just explaining to them that one, there's no such thing, right? There's no such thing as like you hit a peak amount of money and people don't want more money, right? But people are always going to want to work for more money. But I was explaining to the person that like you're giving multiple people an opportunity here. You're not just giving the sales rep that money or that opportunity, but you're truly like changing communities. because we live in a multi-generational, like interwoven society in Africa and most African like countries. There's a lot of like interconnectedness. So if you help one person, they're going to continue to like trickle out and help multiple people, whether it's like supporting family members or helping kids go to school or even building schools or other opportunities within that community. Like you're making a huge impact.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that money's good. Like, not only are their kids going to go to a better school, their nieces are going to go to a better school. Their younger sister's now going to be able to go to like a better college. They're going to be, all the money's going to go back into the community, which is so cool. It's like the ripple impact is there. Well, in the interest of time, I just want to know, is there anything else that you would like to share today to everybody who's listening?
I think it's just like getting more people into like what's happening in Africa and all the opportunities that are here. Honestly, we have like a goal of creating 1,000+ jobs, and I think that is something we can do in community. And so any like additional support or people like myself who saw you doing what you do and wanted to come help and support that like endeavor, we'd love to hear from you all. And yeah, and especially like the African diaspora could do tons here. So
yeah, it'd be amazing. Cool. And where can people find you if they want to connect with you personally after this?
LinkedIn is the best, and I know we preach about LinkedIn a lot, but I'm on LinkedIn, just first and last name. Yeah, and that's the best place to connect with me.
Perfect. We'll put your LinkedIn profile in the show notes. So everybody, like I would say, go and follow you. I know you do some posts as well, and you have like such a great perspective. So it'd be, I hope everybody connects with you after this. And thank you for joining. I know we're going to do like 12 other meetings today. So. But it's good to see you. And I hope the world knows like just how lucky we are to have you at Cradle and how you have like done so much for the team members, the organization. Like you've just been amazing. So I hope everybody knows that you're like the rock star at Cradle, and you're like the other parent, I would say. That's how I think it feels to everybody. But yeah, we are so happy that you're with us. So thank you for joining. And if anyone is listening to this, please keep subscribing to the podcast, the show, wherever you're listening to this, and we'll see you next time.